We didn't know when I asked you to come in this Friday, the news that we heard yesterday, but I am particularly excited that you'll have the opportunity to comment on the idea that Mike Bloomberg may jump into the race.
Yes.
It actually, it's highly, there's a lot to chew on with this.
Absolutely.
It's not like Tom Steyer jumping into the race where it was going to have no impact.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's possible to find an example in the history of anything where 48, probably up to like $57 million did less than what Tom Steyer's $57 million has done so far in his presidential campaign. It's almost like defies physics.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's amazing. And they were buying endorsements in Iowa. Apparently nobody knew. Apparently this businessman who's really got his stuff together so much, his top lieutenant in Iowa was buying, and nobody knew.
Of course, no.
I mean, how could you? He was doing it with petty cash.
Yeah,
he was doing it with the petty cash receipts. Good. What do you call it though? Judge of character, Tom Steyer.
Yeah,
so
clearly,
give him that. But here's why. Well, here's one factor that's going to be interesting about Bloomberg entering the race, because we have questions as to how much will he damage Pete Buttigieg, for instance? How much will he damage Joe Biden?
Oh man!
How much?
Gentrify them, Mike.
How much? How much would Bernie or Warren have had to pay to ask Mike Bloomberg to come into the race so that they could just have like, oh, thank you for giving us a predicate. Yeah. He's literally like a walking
spoiler.
Well, not spoiler, but what do they call it?
Example of everything.
Yeah, what is it when they draw those like pictographs or whatever it is? Like he is literally a walking example of why their whole policy.
He's the living example of their argument for their campaigns.
Exactly. And
he's not going to peel off too many votes from them, I don't think.
No, that's the point. And that's why it would hurt Buttigieg. And then there's also another question. Jeff Hauser from the Revolving Door Project had an interesting tweet, which I don't necessarily think is the case, but apparently it's much cheaper to buy airtime if you're a candidate versus an outside PAC. And
interesting.
But when you're a billionaire,
it's not hard to buy.
You're going to risk, the humiliation of losing an election. Why wouldn't you just do it as a PAC anyways?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if I buy that. But here's also another factor that's going to be interesting: is watching members of the media apparently become lightheaded and confused and saying some of the, honestly, the most ridiculous things in the world. I guess just because of a desire, such a deep desire to have what they perceive as a viable sort of like middle of the road, really at the end of the day, they're looking for people who are not going to upset the apple cart when it comes to the political economy.
Yeah.
And here's Chuck Todd on MSNBC in what is like, this almost feels like the outtake. Like, those, like we had that story the other day of that woman on ABC talking about the Epstein story.
Yeah.
When the feed runs and they're not on air.
Right.
It sort of feels like that because it's so disoriented, it seems like. But here is Chuck Todd.
Guns and climate. Who's to his left?
Pause it for 1 second. He's asking, who is to the left of Michael Bloomberg on guns and climate? And climate.
Climate's the interesting one there.
Climate's really this sort of, guns, there's actually just a couple answers.
Yeah.
But with climate, it's like, how could you even ask that question? Go ahead.
Guns and climate. Who's to his left?
Well, Beto was to his left on guns, but he's not going to be a factor any longer.
Right? I mean, so...
Also the governor of
you can make an argument.
Bloomberg has embraced the Green New Deal.
I don't think he's embraced that. I agree.
That's one area where he actually is more to the center than she is.
You know, in the
Pause it for 1 second. Not just she is, incidentally. There's another person in the race who is also to the left of Bloomberg on the climate. I mean, not to mention also Jay Inslee and perhaps
the governor.
Maybe,
that was. Did you catch that? Was what Barnacle? Did you catch that? That's Barnacle, right?
No, that was not Barnacle. That's
Howard Feynman was going. There's the governor.
And then he couldn't remember.
I don't think he was talking about the green. I don't
No,
think
he was talking about Inslee. He was trying to find
I think
Inslee's
he was
name.
trying to think of Inslee's name, but I'm not
that's what he was trying to do. Yeah.
How many? How long did it take us to get through that clip? So far,
that's 19 seconds.
19 seconds. That's pretty amazing that you can deliver with like a genuine question and get two solid answers that completely demolish the premise of your question. That's quick.
Yeah.
The Green New Deal is so far more aggressive on climate change than anything Michael Bloomberg has ever talked about. Yes, bike lanes, super important. I'm very happy to have them in the city. But both Warren and Sanders have subscribed to the Green New Deal. I would bet that even like Harris and Booker are probably somewhere, somewhere
Bernie actually
at least
wrote a Green New Deal, which is significantly more comprehensive than any of them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but what's their
put the
policy
microphone
on
up?
giant soft drinks? They've been weirdly silent on that issue.
Yeah, that's part of the environment.
But
Where they are on Slurpees.
continue.
I don't think he's embraced that. I agree.
That's one area where he actually is more to the center than she is.
You know, in the smoke-filled room, you'd say, on paper, Bloomberg has the right balance of what you want to win a broad election. Maybe not a deep election, but if you're trying to win the ex-suburban Republican, which, by the way, Michael Bloomberg's an ex-suburban, arguably
Pause
an
it for 1 second.
What is an ex-suburban Republican a Republican who formerly lived in the suburbs?
Or a former Republican who lives in the
Wait,
suburbs.
or whose only political position was being mayor of the largest city in the country?
You are you write about politics.
I do, yes.
What does that mean, a deep election as opposed to a wide election?
I think
Very deep.
I think what he means is like a lot of people like him a little bit instead of a small amount of people liking him a lot.
No, I understand that concept. But which elections can you win with a little people liking you a lot?
I'm not sure.
Like, who runs that campaign? What kind of election? What scenario
Would you
is
be
that?
like, not a lot of people like this guy, but the ones who do really like him.
I'm
Or it's like-
reasonably well liked by all of you slobs.
I'm running for third place.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that's where you want the narrow election.
Right.
Go ahead. I'm just curious about, I don't understand what that term means.
Maybe it's like a dog whistle for appealing to moderates.
I don't think so, but here go.
what you want to win a broad election. Maybe not a deep election, but if you're trying to win the ex-suburban Republican, which, by the way, Michael Bloomberg's an ex-suburban, arguably an ex-urban Republican.
Yeah,
And at the same time.
Okay, so he's an ex. So
They need
the
to
point
win
is
the
he's looking about
exurbs.
the ex-Republicans,
Yes, ex-Republicans. Yeah.
former Republicans,
Yeah.
who presumably have left the Republican Party.
Right.
Right. So why would they vote for Donald Trump under any circumstance? Why would they not be getting? But go ahead.
Arguably an ex-urban Republican. And at the same time, you care about these core progressive issues like guns and climate. It ain't just somebody buying an election.
I'm trying to think of Michael Bloomberg as the nominee in Western Pennsylvania.
I know what you're thinking.
The suburbs of Michigan, Michigan suburbs, the Ohio suburbs, the Wisconsin suburbs.
By the way, there's only one running mate for him.
Huh?
It's the same running mate Joe Biden.
All right, pause
has
it
to pick.
before we
It's
get to this. This whole weirdness that comes up. Feynman's trying to picture Bloomberg appealing to the white working class.
The white working class in
that we keep
Western
hearing about in
Pennsylvania.
Western Pennsylvania. I would also add, I would like to see Mike Bloomberg also appeal to let's say, black people in Philadelphia would be hard to imagine.
Or for that matter,
black people in Milwaukee,
Black people-
or white working class people in the outer Wisconsin counties, or black people in Michigan, or white people in Michigan.
Yeah, I was gonna- yeah,
or while we're at it, like who
Let's
is
go
Mike
specific
Bloomberg
to
going
his
to
example.
appeal to? Maybe Florida.
What about Arab people in Michigan and Muslim people in Michigan? I mean,
That may
we're
also be
talking
a
about
problem.
like another additional layer, and like the one state where it's like, oh, on top of his general mass non-appeal
Yeah.
to African Americans and working people of every background, we also have a guy who presided over like basically
Mass
CIA
surveillance.
mass
Right,
surveillance,
mass surveillance.
of like a key demographic in a pivotal swing state.
I mean, if anything, he'd help this like broad multiracial working class coalition unite in hatred of him.
I mean, this is, but just like this type of analysis. Now, on some level, I have mixed feelings about this because I think that he really is going to. It's a bizarre play on his part unless he thinks he's setting up maybe some type of third party run.
Yeah.
If like a Warren or a Sanders wins, but beyond that, he's almost, it seems to me, like going to cut in to parts of Biden and to
The white-
whatever
yeah.
is there for Buttigieg.
Yeah.
Because those are the only people who even know him.
Right.
That's
That's
the other thing,
exactly
is, like,
right.
People don't know who Mike Bloomberg is across the country. Like Rudy Giuliani, when he was mayor of New
Yeah.
York, the America's mayor, he was America's mayor. He couldn't even get out of New Hampshire. Here is Chuck Todd now basically just throwing this out. I mean, I think he's right, but it's just a weird sort of like, here's a guy who's never going to win, but here's who he would need for his vice president nominee.
Trying to think of Michael Bloomberg as the nominee in Western Pennsylvania,
I know what you're thinking.
the suburbs of Michigan, the Michigan suburbs, the Ohio suburbs, the Wisconsin suburbs.
By the way, there's only one running mate for him.
Huh?
It's the same running mate Joe Biden has to pick, and it's the same running mate Pete Buttigieg has to pick. It's Stacey Abrams, by the way. Like, there's nobody else that Bloomberg can match up with if he someone got this nomination than Stacey Abrams.
Sure.
Why?
Yes. I think he has to have a person of color. I think he needs a diversity on the ticket. Person of color, no?
I'm just trying to think of
Wait, pause
Bloomberg
it.
selling.
No, wait a second. I want to go back here. Did you see what just happened here? I mean, this is what's so weird about what's going on here. Like, I'm actually genuinely concerned for Chuck Todd here because he's laying out every single one of his premises has been shot down
Right,
throughout
as-
this entire
yeah.
thing. And as Feynman is basically saying, I can't come up with a single element of the Democratic Party that's going to
That
vote
would
for
support-
Mike Bloomberg.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going around to just about every sort of key demographic, and I can't even imagine. And so Todd doesn't even want to hear that. He immediately goes to, I've got one that's going to win. It's Stacey Abrams. Now, just to give you a sense of how rudimentary this is, the idea that the Democrats would put up a ticket, regardless of who is at the top of that ticket, where the ticket does not reflect black people or brown people in this country, is just absurd. Like if there's no amount of money that I would be willing to not willing to wager that the presidential ticket will reflect a gender and race diversity. I mean, you'd have to be an idiot not to do that. But he is really like, and then he just gets shot down. And
You ever
there's
hear of
just
a guy
moment.
named Stacey, of a woman named Stacey Abrams?
And then-
There's
Think about
only
it.
one person of color in politics.
I want you just to look at, and look, we've all been there. I have some sympathy for this because there's been times I've felt embarrassed when everything I said, everybody rejects. Mostly that happens at home. But here is, watch Chuck Todd take a sip of water after Howard Feynman goes, why?
Nobody else that Bloomberg can match up with if he someone got this nomination than Stacey Abrams.
Why?
Yes. I think he has to have a person of color.
Huh?
I think he needs a diversity on the ticket. Person of color, no?
I don't know what he would need. I'm just trying to think of Bloomberg selling nationally in the nitty-gritty of the key swing places. Maybe he can. Maybe.
Look, I didn't think
He's a New York mayor.
But I didn't think New York City.
Right.
But I thought that was a problem for Trump. Like, I think we all thought New York City doesn't sell in America, and yet what were the two nominees?
Well, Trump was the candidate. Trump was the candidate from The Apprentice. He wasn't the candidate from New York.
I just think the New York
And the guy that talks their language, which Michael Bloomberg doesn't.
Right. No, but I do think that I don't think that's going to be as problematic.
I think
as it could have been
Republicans,
even a decade.
No, Republicans are ready to hit him on the two issues you just said, right? Climate and guns. They're going to paint him as Elizabeth Warren. He is that extreme, is what they're going to say.
Sure, but Elizabeth Warren's going to paint him as a closet right winger. So in some ways, he's going to be. He could be bookended well, maybe.
Right, because as you know, your typical Republican voter listens to Elizabeth Warren
Sam,
for cues
for her
on-
Sam,
Yeah.
you don't get it. He's gonna be.
You don't understand. So the thing is, with,
Right
with
here.
Bloomberg, it'll be easy for Republicans to hate him, and it'll be easy for Democrats to hate him, and that's exactly where you want to be.
That's the sweet spot.
That's
It's like, what-
right where you want to be.
What part aren't you getting? Everybody will detest him. And I'm
As opposed
excited.
to depth, it's not even like it's not just not only not deep,
Yeah.
it's not just wide, it's actually transcendent. It floats over the electorate, and that's the way that he gets elected.
It's
So-
like it's peak, I guess, like cable news brain to have thought it through by the end of the little segment there, to have been like, what you got to understand is that, like, this half of the voters will not like him, and the other half of the voters won't like him. That's why he's got a real shot at this.
I think that the heartland is crying out to be lectured about gulpies.
Folks, support for today's show